Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is November 3rd, and right now we're looking at the infrared satellite imagery, BC, Washington, Oregon. You can see our atmospheric river with its tap all the way back across to the subtropical Pacific Ocean here, moving into British Columbia. This will sag south across the region here over the next couple of days. Strong system is going to dive through British Columbia tonight and through tomorrow, bring a strong pressure gradient across the region here, and the winds have been uptrending in the models here. We'll look at what we can expect, and some very cold air is going to move across British Columbia out over the Pacific. Going to try to spawn a low here, and it's going to try to bring some cooler air down to the lower elevations. We'll take a look at what we can expect snowfall wise as we get closer to this event coming up through the weekend and early next week. Taking a closer look here, we've got some wind advisories up, winter weather advisory, some flood watch, flooding concerns, burn scar areas. We've got all kinds of stuff going on here across western Washington. Same thing for eastern Washington. We've got high wind watches, winter storm watch coming up here. We've got some peak wind gusts expected to be up towards 60 for Ritzville, Spokane, southeast Washington. It's going to get wild over here, folks, through tomorrow afternoon. Tree damage, power outages are possible, blowing dust, you name it. We got it out there for eastern Washington. Now, this is that cold snap coming up here as we go through this weekend in towards next week. Temperatures way down in the teens. Watch out, farmers, for your agriculture, your livestock, irrigation equipment out there. It's going to get cold as we go in through next week. First snow of the year coming up tonight into tomorrow morning. This is going to turn over to rain for many areas, even the mountainous areas, as the atmospheric river brings some pretty warm air across the region here. But then it'll turn back to snow as the atmospheric river slides south and we bring more cold air back into the region. But some of that snow initially could be pretty wet, and it can damage trees and even cause some power outages and whatnot across the area. So heads up for that. Looking at day 2, excessive rainfall outlook across Washington down towards Oregon. Slight concerns along the coast, the foothills of the Washington down into Oregon here, even some of the lowlands here for western Washington as well. And they even mentioned the burn scar areas by name in here because we're going to be getting some pretty crazy rainfall totals up to an inch per hour across the area here coming up. They're talking about these stronger convective elements noted along the front that favor enhanced rainfall rates. This is a very powerful storm coming up here, both precipitation and wind-wise. So heads up, people. This is the real deal. Now, this is looking at the NAM. Let's go ahead and go through today. You can see that by this afternoon, precipitation overspreading the area. Start to snow across the Cascades, but you can see that warmer air move in and kind of retreat that snow line back to the higher peaks of the North Cascades here. Moderate rain is going to be going on for hours across the west slopes of the Cascades, the Olympic Mountains, move down towards the Oregon coast here. There's going to be some rain shadowing across the central Puget Sound and across eastern Washington, Oregon, British Columbia. And you can see that snow level rise as we go on in through Friday afternoon across much of eastern Washington all the way into Montana as well. Only the higher peaks will remain as snow. But then we'll bring some colder air in behind that, and we'll take a look at that here coming up in a little bit. I want to go over the winds here now. We're going to go 3 kilometer. You can see as we go through this evening, the winds start to pick up a bit across the Puget Sound. Some good southeasterlies for the northwest interior. That's why they have the wind advisory up there, up the Strait of Georgia. You can see the higher elevation of the Olympic Mountains as well as the coastline. And then as we go on in through Friday morning, the winds start to pick up, or late tonight, Friday morning, winds start to pick up across the Central Sound. 43 miles per hour would cause some problems here for the Central Sound. There's a lot of leaves on trees. Tacoma, Olympia, up into upper 40s possibly here. That would be an issue. Now watch what the HRRR does. We get a little bit further into Friday as the system moves through and the pressure rise still starts really coming in here. This calling for 50s. I don't know if this is going to happen across Seattle, but I kind of hope not, actually. This would cause some pretty significant power outages for this time of the year. I mean, look at this, 51 all the way up towards Edmonds with the southerly winds, and then the westerly winds come roaring down the Strait of Juan de Fuca across Whidbey Island towards the Mukilteo, Edmonds area. Potential for 60 mile per hour gusts in that westerly surge there. Look at some of these wind speeds for eastern Washington, just wild. That's why that high wind watch is up down here. I'm be surprised if they don't extend this and then turn this into a high wind warning all the way, including Spokane, Ritzville, southeast Washington, and for the higher terrain as well. Is really going to get hammered with this system as it moves through on the day of Friday. I mean, that's going to get crazy over there in eastern Washington and potentially even here in western Washington, especially with this westerly surge coming down the strait. Now, taking a look at the NAM3 cam, let's see what it has to say. This is hot off the presses here. You can see some pretty good winds coming in overnight tonight, but then it picks up a little bit as we go through the day. Friday, late morning shown here, but look, some 50 mile per hour gusts possible for the South Puget Sound here. The NAM starts to bring this westerly surge then later down on Friday night, but not as strong as the HER or what the European's showing. We'll look at the European here in a moment. But some strong winds for eastern Washington, the higher terrain, so pretty good agreement there, and some pretty gusty winds up towards 50 miles per hour all the way down the Washington, Oregon coastline here. This is looking at the European here. This is last night's run. Put this through into Friday morning. You can see that by Friday afternoon, some mid-40s. This would cause some power outages probably across the Central Sound. And then it shows this westerly surge just coming down the Strait of Juan de Fuca across Whidbey Island. Look at the 63 miles per hour from Mukilteo there. It'll be interesting to see if this verifies. But look, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, higher terrain. Good gusts are coming. High wind warnings may be needed out there for eastern Washington. Now, taking a look here, this is our atmospheric river. This is about now here, and you can see it moving into Washington, really impacting western Washington and Oregon here as we go on in through the day. This is now Saturday morning. It'll be sliding down Oregon into Northern California there, hopefully bringing California some beneficial rains. But this one should put an end, I think, to the drought concerns here, at least across western Oregon and Washington, as we're still technically under severe drought here, if you can believe that. But after this weekend, probably not. Now, this is looking at the European on the left versus GFS on the right. As we scroll through here, you can see the stronger rain shadow across the Central Sound on the GFS here on the right versus the European on the left, showing the rain shadow issues that always occur on the east slopes of the Cascades up through British Columbia as well. But it'll be interesting to see which model is correct. As you can see, as we go out here towards hour 80, Seattle up over 2 inches, but on the GFS just shows 1 inch. But look down towards Portland on both models. Willamette Valley getting some totals up over 3 inches. Big time totals coming across the Cascades for the Olympic Mountains as well. So big storm rolling in here, folks. This is a system that went through now. Pretty chilly air aloft, right? But now look at this atmospheric river. Really warms things up. Even at 10,000 feet, a couple areas it does bring it above freezing. But now look at this temperature gradient back here across the north tip of Vancouver Island here. It's just cold air just completely overspreads a region, just like a hammer just coming across the area. Here goes our modified Arctic low out here. Not a perfect trajectory, so it's going to be a little bit tricky getting snow down to the sea level areas here, but the higher hilltops and higher elevations are probably going to see good snowfall out of this. As you can see just how much cold air spreads down into southern BC here. Will we get enough moisture? Will there be some convection? Will there be some convergence zones set up, some upslope flow snowfalls? We really have to just kind of play this day by day until we get really good model agreement and the high resolution models come into the short term here over the next couple of days. So right now, we can't totally rule out lowland snow across western Washington down towards Portland, southwest BC as well. But right now, we don't know exactly what's going to occur. It's going to be better if we wait a couple more days. This is looking at Sunday night here by the time this low is arriving. So we have a couple more days to try to figure out these details. Now, taking a look here at 18,000 feet, look at the system moving by here. Very cold air aloft. And you can see the atmospheric river kind of point at the region here. Not shown that well at 18,000 feet. Like I mentioned before, those features are not this tall. But you can see some warmer air aloft there. Now then, look at this very cold air arrive as we go on into Saturday afternoon here, Saturday night. And then by Sunday, this Arctic low starts trying to spin off our coastline here. But you can see this very cold air that makes its way off Alaska and down across the Gulf of Alaska and into the Pacific Northwest here. And this cold air is just going to settle all the way across the region. But look at this polar low, very strong for this time of year, or at least well positioned for us here in the Pacific Northwest. Now, this is looking at 18,000 feet also. I just wanted to show you guys this one here. You can see that lobe open up right off the coast of Washington here and kind of hang out for a while. So we may get a couple chances of some snowfall across the region here into the lowlands, but we'll have to continue to watch that as we get closer. Right now, it is just too soon to tell. Now, taking a look at 500 millibar wind heights here, 18,000 feet, you can see, again, this trajectory is kind of long. We would like this a little bit more off the coast of BC and back into Washington here. So it is a little bit of a long trajectory here. But there is someone coming off of BC here too, so maybe there'll be a little bit of further low development that does spawn some localized snowfall across the region here. This is looking, again, I showed this yesterday, 1985, November 21st. Look at this nice trajectory of this jet stream at 18,000 feet coming off of BC right back into Washington. This produced a 7+ inch snowfall for SeaTac. Very impressive system. And you can see how the polar low just clipped us. Instead of this one we have now is a bit out further over the water here. So it's going to be modified at the surface a little bit more as it throws some southerly flow at the surface back over the region here. So again, we'll be able to pay attention to that a little bit more detail as we go. But now look in here. Here goes the European atmospheric river going through the day Friday here. We talked about all those impacts there. As soon as that passes, it's going to change back over for a lot of the areas to snowfall across the Cascades. Then this low pressure system sets off the coast here. And as we look here into Sunday, it does show some snow across the Central Sound up towards the northwest interior, but I think temperatures may be too marginal here. This is not a dynamic system here, and I don't think precipitation rates are going to be enough to make this stick all the way down to sea level as what we see right now. So we'll continue to watch this here, but any kind of low setting up here with some Arctic air north of us, we got to be careful here. We can't just rule out snow. Plus, there could be some convergent zones going on here, or maybe some northerlies will meet up and produce some localized snowfall amounts across the Puget Sound, or maybe we'll get a deformation band on a little bit of a stronger low pressure system as we go on in through mid next week. But again, all things that we will have to watch as we come up here, but the cold air is definitely coming across the area. I want to look at 100-meter wind speeds here briefly. Now, you can see the system bringing quite a bit of wind across the area. Look at these winds roaring by the time we're into early Friday afternoon across the area. These are sustained winds, by the way, in knots, so miles per hour would be higher. Then you see westerly surge blast down the Strait of Juan de Fuca there. Now, as we go a little bit further out, here comes this modified Arctic low down the coastline here. And as this thing positions itself off the shoreline here, you can see the outflow coming through the Fraser River gap here. So this is going to start probably late Sunday night into Monday. The Fraser River Valley winds will be blowing, but they don't come directly down the Puget Sound. You can see kind of this offshore flow across the Cascades here from the east. That's going to make it tough to get precipitation down to the surface here as well. You're getting a little bit of compressional heating across some of the lowland areas of the Puget Sound and Willamette Valley here as we go on in through Monday night. But you can see this offshore flow trying to bring this Arctic air out over the region. You can get some upslope flow into, it comes out of the Fraser River Valley here, moves across the Puget Sound, picks up some moisture, and then deposits there near Port Angeles and some of the slopes of the Olympic Mountains there. You guys have probably heard about some of those good snowfalls that they get out there once in a while. That can also occur there on portions of Vancouver Island also. But then you can see that low pressure drop south of the system here, and we're going to kind of stay cool for a while here as we go through next week with some chilly overnight lows all the way through the end of the week, probably, especially if we clear out in any areas. We get that radiational cooling, and you can drop down into the 20s for some regions, even in the lowlands. This is looking at 6-hour minimum 2-meter temperature here. So I just want to speed ahead and look at this cold air that kind of sags all the way down across British Columbia. This is at the surface here. So this white line is kind of the freezing line here. So as we go on into later next week, you'll see some of these areas in the Puget Sound, Southwest BC drop below freezing for a bit. But look at eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, Idaho, Montana. The interior areas are really going to get cold with this cold snap coming up here. But as per usual, it does stay warmer here west of the Cascades. Looking at Seattle-Tacoma, you can see the atmospheric river moving through Friday and Saturday, and then the rapid drop in temperatures, and you see some of these overnight lows probably dropping below freezing as we go into mid next week. And look at some of these highs, might not even get up to 45 some of these days, so you're definitely going to notice the chill in the air. Spokane International, look at some of these highs all the way down into the teens, maybe not even getting above freezing a couple of these days as we go here through early next week. Portland International, probably a few days below freezing here coming up. Some pretty chilly daytime highs as well. Boise, the cold air finally gets down in there as we go through midweek coming up here. Some highs probably not getting out of the 30s as well. Look at Kamloops, interior BC out there, probably several days not getting above freezing. Pretty typical up there in central BC, central and eastern BC as these cold air masses move down over the continent. This is Long Beach Airport, Tofino, out there on Vancouver Island. So you can see even some freezing temperatures possible out there, but some pretty chilly daytime highs, even all the way out to the west shore of the Vancouver Island area. Now looking here, European control run. I just want to show you guys this system driving through here. This is what's going to bring our winds. You can see this tight gradient across western Washington and Oregon here, eastern Washington, as this powerful low, 977 millibar low moving into Alberta here. Tight gradient, really going to bring some strong winds across the area. High wind warnings probably going to be needed for eastern Washington, as I mentioned. And then that Arctic high pushes down, and you get the resultant troughing based on this high. So you can imagine this big dome of air moving out to this lower pressure here, going to try to move off the coastline of BC here and back into western Washington. And as it moves over the mountains, it does do some compressing and warming as well. That's why we do stay warmer west of the Cascades here. But you can see this low pressure system. With any low pressure system here in Arctic air nearby, you can't rule out lowland snowfall yet. You can always get surprises. So we'll continue to watch that as we get closer. Now, taking a look at the GFS here, this is 5,000 feet, atmospheric river. You can plainly see it bringing warm air into the region here. Then the snow levels just crash behind that as the cold air starts to sag south across BC. And it kind of shows a little bit of cyclogenesis here as we go on in through Monday. So, again, can't rule out lowland snowfall as of yet. But this is pretty chilly air for this time of year. As you can see, it spread all the way down towards Baja California here across Southern California as well. Now, looking at Stevens Pass, you can see they're going to go above freezing here for a bit, but look at the snow level just crash back down below pass level as you get into early Saturday morning there. Whistler here just spends a bit of time above freezing. Then look at this very cold air moves across British Columbia. Mount Hood, look at this cold air just crashed down Saturday morning. It's bringing that cold air in a little bit earlier too versus yesterday's runs. And just for comparison, this is Honolulu here. Check this out. You'd have to go up to like what is that, 15,000 feet, 15,000 feet just to get to the freezing level. Nice warm conditions at the surface there. So just a little comparison there. Now looking at Whidbey Island, check this out. 50 miles per hour is the mean, and you can see a couple different solutions here picking up high winds across the region. Then we're looking at Seattle-Tacoma. This has been on the uptrend too. It's now into the mid-40s here. So this is looking like a pretty good early November blustery, gusty windstorm here across the Pacific Northwest. Spokane, look at this, is uptrended big time. Look at every ensemble virtually is above 50 miles per hour. In fact, every single one is, except for maybe one in there, it looks like. But the high wind warning is probably going to be needed for Spokane as we go through the day. This is Pendleton out there too. This has definitely been on the uptrend as well. The mean is up towards 50 miles per hour. Some of the solutions are higher. This is Portland International, definitely on the uptrend as well, into the low 40s now here, as you can see. So we're going to have some pretty widespread wind issues here as we go. Astoria has been definitely on the uptrend as well, up into the mid 40s here. Look at Great Falls National Weather Service out there in Montana. The mean is up into the 50s here for probably 12, maybe even 12 or more hours here across the area. Missoula, big winds coming out there. The mean is up towards 50 miles per hour. So pretty widespread wind concerns going on. This is southeast of Mount Rainier. I wanted to show you guys this one here. Look at this mean well up into the 60s. If you want to see some real wind, get out on some of the peaks there out towards the Naches between Yakima and Mount Rainier, and you're going to feel it out there. I wonder if anybody's going to be camping out there as we go on in through Friday night. Now, taking a look here, 24-hour precipitation in inches. I just want to kind of let this run through, and you guys can kind of get the timing here. You can see by tomorrow afternoon some of the totals that have built up in the North Cascades here. And look at across the Olympic Mountains there. That's over 6.5 inches at that point. Let's see, back up a little bit more. Yep, 6.5 inches would be the peak 24-hour period total, it looks like. Then it slides down through Portland. Big totals for the coastal range all the way down into Northern California here. Then you can see it end from north to south as the atmospheric river slides down into California here through Sunday morning. Cooler air arrives behind it, but you can still see some precipitation amounts occurring. This would be in the form of snow at this point here across the higher terrain for sure. Probably still valley rain as we're going on in through Sunday. Pretty chilly rain, but still rain nonetheless. Now, taking a look here down for California again. We did this yesterday also. I just want to kind of show this. This is going to be really beneficial down there. Here we go on in through Friday evening, Saturday morning. By Saturday afternoon, you can see it starting to move down into central California. Now, Sunday morning, it moves down to the Sierra Nevadas. And by the time we get to Monday morning, another system swinging down across California, bringing some big totals across the Sierra Nevada, even across the mountains of Southern California. Nevada getting rainfall. I mean, this is just nuts. Now, taking a look here, this is snow depth in inches. So let's see how this progresses. You can see this snowpack initially build as we go through tonight, but then you see it getting eaten away at the lower levels as the atmospheric river brings that warm air in across the region here. And then once that passes through, you can see it start to replenish itself here. And look here, I mean, the European is showing some snowfall totals for the lowlands. So we got to be careful here. And I'm going to be interested to see what the high resolution models show and what the European, for example, shows as we get a little bit closer to this event. It's kind of been waffling back and forth. It's even shown, yesterday was showing a little bit of a 2-inch snowfall around SeaTac even. So you can see some of the, just off the water, you'd probably have to get off the Puget Sound, but you can see some snowfall accumulations occurring there. And then you can see another little bounce back. Look, an inch on the ground at SeaTac by next Monday. Who knows? We'll have to go ahead and watch that. This is probably a more accurate indicator than versus just using a 10-to-1 snow ratio or even the Kuchera, because this is snow depth in inches. This is what the European thinks is going to accumulate at the surface here. So right now it doesn't look like a big snowstorm or anything like that, but we could see some flakes into the lowlands here. Now moving on a little bit further here, 200 plus hours, this is snow depth. You can kind of see it as the precipitation stops. We stop building up that snowpack. But you can look, Stevens Pass here, probably going to be up over a foot to 2 feet probably. And Paradise, they're building up a nice snowpack as well. Mount Baker also. So it's still early in the year, but if we get another good system in here, we might be skiing by Thanksgiving for some areas. Now looking at total snow Kuchera. This is just a basic total snow. It's not taking into account any melting or anything like that. And you can see a little bit of snowfall there across the Puget Sound. But again, it's still a little too early. I know people want to know how much snow are we going to get, but we kind of have to halt the brakes on that and wait to see what happens. But it's not out of the question to see some snowflakes in the lower elevations. But you can see over the 10-day period some pretty good snows all the way down through the Sierra Nevada and for much of the region here except for the lowlands. Now taking a look here, this is the GFS calling for the atmospheric river, getting close to being a strong event here across some of the Washington and Oregon coastline coming up here. And you can see the previous atmospheric river category 2 rating there. So right now it looks like a 3 across Washington, Oregon, maybe a 4. We'll see how that goes, but some very impressive rainfall totals coming up here. Now 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, you can see this below average for much of the west here. This would be for November 8th through 12th. Good signal there. Then, as you can see, mostly Montana bullseye here, but there's going to be a lot of questions on what's coming here through mid-November here. These models are bound to change. I'm seeing big differences between what the GFS and the European are showing in the extended right now, but we're not going to worry about that too much. It's off in fantasy land. This was actually put out. This data is valid from November 1st. It was issued today. Still have that severe drought across Washington. That's probably going to be a distant memory by the time this weekend rolls through there, I would imagine. But you can still see we have that exceptional extreme drought for portions of Oregon. So, maybe we can help them out here as we get towards the fall and winter months, hopefully. But yeah, a lot of wild weather coming up here, folks. This storm is really trending upwards. I've been talking about it for about a week now, nonstop, about what kind of winds we're going to get. And it actually looks like it's trending upward last minute here. Not surprising. That's a pretty favorable track for strong winds across the area. You put a low pressure into British Columbia and you cast a nice, powerful gradient here with the ridging out here over the Pacific Ocean. And you've got a good gradient going across the area. And that looks like it's going to materialize. So strong winds, heavy rain, then very cold air is going to move across the region. I know a lot of my viewers are off in the backcountry, in the mountains, and some remote areas. So you are definitely going to feel this frontal system as it rolls through here on the day Friday and through Saturday morning, especially at the higher elevations. And we're going to build up the snowpack as we go on in through early November towards mid-November, and hopefully we can continue to do so as we move on and through later on through this month. So anyway, yeah, click like, subscribe, turn your notifications on. I may do another one tonight briefly on the wind conditions and what we can expect wind-wise as we go through this afternoon and evening. If we trend upwards a little bit, I'll probably for sure do another short video this afternoon or this evening based on that. Otherwise, we'll do this again tomorrow, and we'll try to pinpoint a little bit more on what kind of snow we're dealing with here, potential in the lowlands. Right now, it doesn't look like a big event, so we're just kind of halting the brakes on that, waiting for the high-resolution models to get in range. So anyway, yep, hope you guys are having a good day, and I will talk to you guys either tonight or tomorrow.